The iPad Air M3 and the iPad Pro M4 are both really nice, but there's quite a few differences between these iPads. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the differences between these to help you decide if you need the iPad Air M3 for your workflow or the iPad Pro M4. The first and the biggest difference between these two is the screens on them. So right now we got the brightness on both of the screens at max, and you can tell that the one on the iPad Pro is way brighter than the iPad Air. Especially with all these lights I've got on right now, you can really notice a difference in the brightness of the screen. This was something I didn't expect to be a big deal, but whenever I got the iPad Pro and started using it, I realized the screen really is that much clearer and that much brighter. The iPad Air tops out at 500 nits of brightness, and the iPad Pro tops out at 1,000 nits of brightness in SDR content mode, and in HDR content, it can boost all the way up to 1,600 nits of brightness. So if you're using this outside or with a lot of light, it's going to perform a lot better. They also both have anti-reflective coatings, and they both have liquid retina screens. Both the displays do have the same resolution, but the extra brightness and the fact that the iPad Pro has an OLED screen on it makes it just a lot more enjoyable of an experience to use. Also, the iPad Pro does go all the way up to 120 hertz on the refresh rate, which just makes everything look a little bit smoother, especially if you're just browsing the web or using standard apps, and all the animations on them are going to be quite a bit smoother than that of the iPad Air. One other difference with the iPad Pro, if you get the 1 or 2 terabyte model, you can also get the nano texture display, which makes it even better in bright conditions. The next big difference on these is under the hood. So the iPad Air comes with the M3 processor, and the iPad Pro comes with the M4 processor, which for most day-to-day use, you're not going to notice any difference. Both of them have the same exact media engine, so if you do any sort of video editing on these, they're going to perform pretty much identically. But the iPad Air M3 has an 8-core CPU and a 9-core GPU, and the M4 starts out at a 9-core CPU and a 10-core GPU. But if you upgrade to the 1 terabyte version, that's going to add an additional CPU core on it as well. And also, you get 8 gigabytes of RAM on both of these at the base model. But if you get the 1 or 2 terabyte version of the iPad Pro, it's going to go all the way up to 16 gigabytes of RAM instead. To me, the insane display quality of the iPad Pro M4 is probably the biggest selling point and reason to get it over the iPad Air, because it really is that much brighter, clearer, and performs really well whether you're using it indoors or outdoors. And that was the feature I wasn't expecting to like as much on the iPad Pro when I got it as I have. The next set of differences with these is in the cameras. So the iPad Air has the single camera on the back, no LiDAR or true depth on it. But the iPad Pro has a better camera on the back of it that's going to support ProRes video, and it also supports LiDAR, which is going to be useful for augmented reality, or if you want to use this for room scanning, floor plans, or other advanced things like that. The camera on the iPad Pro is going to be a better option than the camera on the iPad Air. But if you're not really a camera person for an iPad, then you're really not going to notice any difference between the two of them. On the front of them, they both have the landscape camera on the top of them, which is really handy for FaceTime calls and video calls. The main difference between these cameras is the one on the iPad Pro is a little bit better, and it also supports true depth, so you can actually blur the background and activate portrait mode on it, which can be really handy for video calls. But I found the video quality on them to be pretty close, but the front camera on the iPad Pro definitely edges out the iPad Airs just by a little bit. As far as basic day-to-day features on these, both of them have pretty good sounding speakers and microphones, but the iPad Pro actually has 4 speakers where the iPad Air has 2 speakers, and you definitely notice extra oomph and power out of the speakers on the iPad Pro. So if you're consuming any sort of media and you're not using headphones, you will notice that the speakers on the iPad Pro sound a lot better, and the screen quality again just leads to a better viewing experience. I also noticed the microphone quality on the iPad Pro is technically better than the one on the iPad Air, but in the real world, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference or care at all. The iPad Pro's main selling point is in the better speakers. Another one of the features to me that really makes the iPad Pro worth it over the iPad Air is Face ID. So the iPad Air just has Touch ID on the side of it, so to unlock it, you have the Touch ID button, which is kind of annoying to use if you're typing on the keyboard and then you have to reach up and use the Touch ID button. But the iPad Pro actually has Face ID, which is super fast, and the Face ID on the iPad Pro works amazingly well. So I really love that you get Face ID on the iPad Pro. If you have both the iPads side by side, you'll also notice they look almost exactly the same. They're very close in size, but the iPad Pro is a little bit thinner, and it's just barely lighter than the iPad Air as well. But in the day-to-day use, I didn't really notice one of them feeling any more comfortable to hold or use than the other. But the iPad Pro is definitely impossibly thin whenever you compare it to the iPad Air. Both of these have a USB-C port on the bottom of them, but with the iPad Pro, you're going to get speeds all the way up to the Thunderbolt or USB 4 class of 40 gigabits a second, and with the iPad Air, that USB-C port tops out at 10 gigabits a second, so it's just USB 3.1 speeds. So if you're using external SSDs or certain accessories, you might not be able to take advantage of all the features with them, but I really didn't notice this being a problem with day-to-day use. Unless you're really considering using a lot of pro-grade accessories, then the iPad Pro will be a better option for you, but you can actually still use the Apple Studio display with the iPad Air if you want. Both of these support external displays and windows and moving things around, which is a really cool experience with how far iPad OS has come. And especially with iPad OS 26 on the way, these features are going to work great on either the iPad Air or the iPad Pro. The last big difference is in storage capacities. With the iPad Air, it starts at 128 gigabytes of storage and you can go all the way up to 1 terabyte. With the iPad Pro, it starts at 256 gigabytes of storage and goes all the way up to 2 terabytes. So this one does give you a higher starting capacity, as well as the higher capacity of 2 terabytes available if you really need it. Next, let's talk about the accessories for these. So both of these can use either the Apple Pencil USB-C or the Apple Pencil Pro. I definitely recommend getting the Apple Pencil Pro to use with these because of the extra advanced features, and namely just the fact that you can charge it and pair it just by magnetically attaching the Apple Pencil to the side of the iPad. The last accessory difference is in the Magic Keyboard cases. Both of these have a specific Magic Keyboard available for the specific iPad. So with the M4 iPad Pro, you are actually supposed to get the M4 iPad Pro Magic Keyboard. With the M3 iPad Air, you're supposed to get that M3 iPad Air Magic Keyboard. The main difference between the Magic Keyboards is the iPad Pro one has backlighting, and it also has an aluminum top, and the one on the iPad Air just doesn't feel quite as nice because it's just got that standard leather top on it, and it doesn't feel quite as durable. It still is a very enjoyable keyboard to type on. I really like the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Air, and the trackpad on it works really great as well, but the one for the iPad Pro is just a little bit nicer. So if you want to get a Magic Keyboard case for the iPad, I really recommend buying the iPad Pro because you're going to appreciate the extra quality and durability of the Pro keyboard. The last thing you need to know about these iPads is the pricing. So the iPad Pro starts out at $1,000 for the 11-inch model. It goes all the way up to $1,300 at the starting price if you want to get the 13-inch model. With the iPad Air, it starts at $600 for the 11-inch model, and if you want to get the 13-inch model, you only add $200, so it goes to $800 to get the 13-inch version. So what makes it worth getting the iPad Pro over the iPad Air? If you just want to get an iPad that's a little bit nicer than your basic day-to-day iPad like the iPad A16, that's when the iPad Air is going to be a really great option for you. The screen quality is excellent on it. I really enjoy using this. It just looks and feels like any other iPad. Performs really well. And with the M3 processor, that's still more than enough than most people need for day-to-day tasks on an iPad, especially if you're just using it mostly as an iPad and not as much as a laptop-like device shoved into an iPad. Then the M3 is still going to be plenty sufficient for almost everyone. Where the iPad Pro M4 really shines is the fact that it does give you that liquid retina display. The OLED quality on it is amazing. The 120 Hz True Motion is also a feature that I didn't expect to like as much as I did. And the screen brightness on this thing is amazing. The speaker quality is great. There's just all those little features that are just ever so slightly upgraded and make the iPad Pro a really premium experience. But I don't think this is the iPad for most people. You should really only buy the iPad Pro if you know you need the extra computing power. If you're going to use this for more advanced work, if you're going to use it almost like a laptop, that's when I would go for the iPad Pro over the iPad Air. I'd also choose the iPad Pro if you want to get the Magic Keyboard case because it really is a nicer, more premium experience to use it on the iPad Pro than the iPad Air. But for most people, if you don't care about all those premium features, you're still going to be totally happy with the iPad Air. I've been using this one for a few months as my daily driver iPad, and it works great. It's great for typing notes, great for browsing the web, sending emails. I love the iPad Air. The iPad Pro just takes everything up a notch and really adds to that premium experience. Now, I also want to say, with an iPad, you can really buy this once and use an iPad for anywhere from 4, 5, 6 years because the chips that Apple is putting in these are so nice compared to anything that any other tablet company is putting out. So I think if you get either of these iPads, it's really going to be an investment for the long term. And if you really want to have it for a long time, you'll definitely appreciate and take advantage of all the features the iPad Pro has to offer. But if you just want to get a great iPad with a little bit more power than something like the iPad mini or the iPad A16, the iPad Air M3 is still a great option. Just buy the iPad Pro if you want to take everything up an extra notch. If you're interested in buying either of these, I do have links to buy both of them in the description below. If you got any questions about the iPad Air M3 or the iPad Pro M4, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming content.